Hey, I hope everybody's doing well. We've got a really good show lined up for you tonight with a really fun guest to talk to. So sit back, relax, get comfortable, and here we go. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Monstrous, the podcast. Tonight, we get to have a good conversation with Mr. Marcus Ellis, who is also with the North American Dogman Project. He's located in Mississippi, and he's a state rep, and he's an investigator and researcher down in Mississippi, and he's agreed to sit and talk with us for a little while about what he does. Mr. Marcus Ellis, how are you doing this afternoon, sir?
Hey, Robert, I'm doing good, man. I'm hanging on in there like you. I'm fighting sinus trouble, but we're just going to power through it and look forward to having some fun talking Dogman and Bigfoot.
Sounds fantastic. So basically, I'm going to hand everything over to you. If you'll tell us a little bit about who you are, we're gonna pretend that nobody has any idea who Marcus Ellis is, and we're gonna let you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're located in Mississippi, how you got started in all this, what you do, all that fun stuff. And somewhere in there, I'll probably ask a few questions, but I'm going to try not to interrupt you and let you tell everybody in the audience your story. So I'm handing it over to you, Marcus. Take it away, buddy.
Well, I'll go ahead and warn you now. You better ask some questions because when I get started running my mouth, I won't know when to stop. So you fire away anytime you want to. My name is Marcus Ellis, and I'm here in Mississippi. I'm located in central Mississippi. I've been actively going out doing Bigfoot investigations for about 8 years. The Dogman phenomenon fell into my lap probably about 6 years ago. It really kind of come up on my radar, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But I had been in various types of rock bands throughout the years. And about 8-9 years ago, my last band, which was a Christian rock band, we kind of split up, went our separate ways. And simultaneously, I had some weird stuff going on my property. I was hearing weird, noises and stuff. And then one night, as the old saying goes, me and I think you can see him laying here, my co-pilot, we're laying in bed about 2:00 one morning, and right out behind, our window, just the woods just erupted. I mean, it sounded like a war zone out there. It was all types of screeching and hollering and screaming. And, in amongst all that, there was this deep kind of guttural, type noise. And you hear barn owls and, coyotes and foxes. And when you're in the country, you hear all that. You kind of know what's going on. And those animals can make some strange, freaky sounds. Well, it upset me pretty bad laying there listening to it because I had just returned from the restroom. And he was laying there kind of like on my chest, and it scared him so bad. He literally sunk his claws into my chest. And he's heard all this stuff before too, but I knew right then he had never heard that. And other animals are really good biosensors. They will let you know when something's not right and something's not going on right and properly around you and in the house, on your property, whatever. So I knew when he freaked out, I freaked out, I got to talk to somebody. So I reached out to a local Bigfoot organization here in Mississippi. And I told them what was going on, and they were like, well, hey, do you know MK Davis? And I'm like, I'm scratching my head going, MK Davis. I'm like, and I'm like, wait a minute, do you mean so-and-so Davis? And I don't want to say MK's first name. I don't know how, it probably doesn't bother him. But they're like, yeah, I think that's who we're talking about. And I'm like, yeah, what about him? And he's like one of the foremost Bigfoot guys in the whole continental United States. And he lives right there in the same town you live in. And I said, well, heck, man, we used to go to church together. I mean, yeah, of course I know MK Davis. So I called MK and told him what was going on. And after a week or two, I got to thinking about it again. I'm sitting here at the house. I'm bored out of my skull. I ain't got a band no more. So I called MK up and I said, hey, how would you feel about taking me under your wing and teaching me and training me how to do what you do? I want to become an investigator and a researcher. And he's like, absolutely. So 8 years ago, he took me in and he's taught me, and to this very day, I still learn something from MK. And we just got back from the Tennessee Wildman Convention up in McMinnville, Tennessee. And, of course, MK spoke, and, I got to meet a bunch of other investigators and researchers and all. But ever since I was a kid, growing up in the 70s, I love DC comics. I love Marvel comics. I had an imagination that was just, off the scale. And all of a sudden, just out of the blue, you have what I call this paranormal boom. You had the Bermuda Triangle. You had the Loch Ness Monster. You had, things like the Amityville Horror and all these hauntings and stuff. And of course, then you have the Patterson-Gimlin film. At this point, it's really making the rounds. And when I saw the Patterson film, I was like, holy crap. And I was hooked. But what really got me was within no time at all, a movie come out there in the mid 70s. And I can promise you this one film, there's more people out there investigating Bigfoot, especially here in the South because of this one movie, than the law ought to allow. And that's The Legend of Boggy Creek. When I saw The Legend of Boggy Creek, it fascinated me and scared me to death at the same time. And of course, you can look back on it now and you go, okay, it is still a little atmospheric. It's kind of creepy in places. And when you look at what Charles Pierce did with the money he did, and the fact that he borrowed money from a trucking company that would have broke his legs literally if he had not paid them back, you realize this is a gem. This is a true film that is, just so inspiring. And every chance I did from that point up till this very day, I soaked in and I absorbed as much of that stuff as I could. Books, magazines, the old papers at the National Enquirer at the checkout stand. I paperbacks. I still have paperback books from the 70s when I was a kid that I just soaked in and absorbed. Well, of course, I was always a big fan of UFOs. 73, I believe it was, if memory serves me correct. There was a huge wave that hit the east and southern part of the country, and Mississippi was right there in amongst all this. We had the famous Hickson Parker abduction case on down on the coast that took place while all this was going on. So there was just a plethora of activity and things booming, and that just captured my imagination. And I've just been a sponge. I've just been a walking encyclopedia of taking this stuff in. The 80s brought on something different. And that was the abduction phenomenon. And I got really into that, and thank goodness I became well versed in that. But when I read Whitley Strieber's Communion, that book just, I mean, I lost sleep at night. I mean, that book just freaked me out. But it also taught me something. I learned something from that book that to this very day, I have never managed to get away from. And real fast, what that is the high strangeness of the UFO abduction phenomenon. When you look back, I mean, John Keel and Jacques Vallée, they were ultra-terrestrial, interdimensional before ultra-terrestrial and interdimensional was cool. They knew back in the 60s and 70s something was wrong here. And in reading Whitley Strieber's book, something popped in my head because something that happened to him told me something's not right here. Something's wrong. I mean, all these abductions in the other books, the Bud Hopkins, the Max, UFO, clean, pristine, surgical, nice, clean, areas, theaters where these procedures were taking place. Still terrifying, but they were almost like hospital-like. And some of the things that happened to Whitley were the exact opposite. He would wake up in dirty, filthy, nasty places. And I'm like, that doesn't add up. Something's wrong here. So anyway, I leaping back forward, I got hooked up with MK. And for years, me and him were together in the field. And all of a sudden, COVID hits. And I can't be around MK. MK can't be around me. You can't be around anybody. You're locked down and stuff. So I joined MUFON. I became just a member. And then after about a year of studying and all, I took my field investigator test, went through all their courses and everything, and I became a field investigator. And I investigated UFOs and UAP with them for about 4 years. Then I joined up with their experiencer resource team, which was the ERT, that they dealt with and specialized in helping, alleged alien abductees. So I got to do that for about 2 years. And then I think you said something a moment ago about changing jobs. I changed jobs. And when I did, that just completely threw me and MUFON into odds with each other. Not from MUFON's point. I mean, those are good guys, and I wouldn't take $1 million for them. But I just couldn't do it no more. And plus, I began to miss being out in the field. I was feeling a desire to get back out there in Bigfoot, and then the Dogman thing really started ramping up. You started seeing more and more, hearing more and more about people encountering Dogman. And this being North American Dogman Project, in the early days of Dogman sightings, and I'll tell you this little story. The Dogman phenomenon got shoved over into a corner as misidentified Sasquatch sightings. If I had $1 bill for every time I heard that, and the whole time in the back of my mind, I'm like, now wait a minute. What you're describing is not a Sasquatch. I mean, yes, there are Sasquatch that do have snouts and do have some facial features that jut out, and I mean, yes, I mean, because some of those have been that. Well, absolutely, positively. But I just never will forget one time I went to a little mini conference with MK, and this guy got up there and spoke, and really cool guy. But he said something that just really kind of was, I don't know. I really don't know how to describe it, but again, it just kind of set my spidey sense to tingling. And I was sitting next to this buddy of mine, and there was this Q&A, and this guy or this woman asked, well, what is it to these Dogman sightings? People are saying they're seeing these upright walking canines out in the woods, and they're popping up along with Bigfoot sightings. What's up with this? And this guy basically just stood up and told everybody there, no, there's no such thing as Dogman. This does not happen. This does not exist. These are all misidentified Bigfoot sightings. And I kind of laughed on the inside, and I leaned over toward my buddy and I said, hey, and he said, yeah. I said, after what he just said, that there's something to this Dogman thing, right? And he started laughing and I started laughing. And that was just kind of that was the kind of coming out where I'm like, I mean, look, believe what you want. There's nothing wrong with that. My belief may not coincide with what you believe or anybody else. But I think the evidence to the contrary now states, yes, there are Dogman sightings. We know that there's Dogman sightings, and they don't look anything like or act anything like Sasquatch. I mean, with Bigfoot, you can have encounters that may not be all that frightening and bone chilling and terrifying. And you can have encounters with Bigfoot where you're sitting there thinking you're probably fixing to lose your life. But you can have positive encounters with Bigfoot. I always tell the story about how this guy lived on this piece of property and he had a chainsaw. And he goes out to this particular spot and he uses his chainsaw just about every day. He's doing some clearing and he takes his chainsaw out there, and it's hot one day, and he gets busy and he forgets and leaves his chainsaw sitting on a log out there in his pasture, probably 400 or 500 yards away on the other side of the farm. He leaves it sitting there, basically in this field. And of course he gets home, he realizes, man, I left my chainsaw out there and it's dark. And his wife goes, well, you're not going back out there. It's too late. It's too dark. Your chainsaw will be fine. It'll be there when you get there in the morning. Of course, he's worried about his chainsaw. So the next morning he gets up and he's like, I got to go get my chainsaw. He opens up the back door, steps out on the back deck, and sitting right there on his deck is his chainsaw. And he knew that there were Sasquatch on his property. He had seen them. They'd seen him, and they just watched him. Most of your Sasquatch, that's just something that they do. They love to watch. They love to observe. I have been in situations where I got too close, and when you get too close, when you've been in a spot too long, they will get aggressive. They will let you know you need to move. They'll bluff charge you. They'll throw stuff at you. They'll pull things down out of trees. And I've encountered a little bit of all that, especially when I saw the Bigfoot that I did. I had just got bluff charged. And the crazy thing about that was when I looked over in the area of this wildlife management area, I turn around, I've got a camera, and this is happening behind me. I turn around and I can see up in the woods, Robert. I'm looking up in the woods. It's a clear shot up in the woods where something just a few seconds before sounded like some Superman had picked up a bulldozer and thrown it through the woods. I turn around, there's nothing there. Absolutely nothing there. And a few minutes later, I'm like, okay, well, they're telling me they want me to go because I know that they're there. No question, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is a spot I know that these creatures are at. And they've run me out of there a couple of times before. And I was like, okay, let me go. So I start walking down the trail, and I just happen to spin around. I've added something new to my gear. We'll talk about that in a second. But before I did this, I would walk a few steps and I would do a 360. I would just turn around because I want to know what's going on behind me as I'm walking away. And as I did my 360, this thing comes out of the tree line on this hiking trail. And I'm looking right at it. It's looking right at me. It's probably 75, 80 yards, just rough guessing, maybe a little bit further. But it's a Bigfoot. I mean, it's no doubt. And it's kind of hunched over, kind of do the little sneaky thing, kind of, crossing over behind me. And I caught it right. I didn't get it on film, sadly, but I caught it. So, what this thing was trying to do, I don't know whether he was just trying to get close, whether he was going to help his buddy across the way, run me out. But I got the message and I left. So my point is, Bigfoot encounters can go several different ways. They can be benign and they can be aggressive. Dogman, they tend to be bad. They tend to be aggressive. I mean, maybe you can correct me, but I'm just not aware of a Dogman encounter where somebody was like, oh, well, that was really cool. And the Dogman is trying to, I've never heard that. Now I've heard a funny story, about a couple that were out in the woods, and they were in like a lover's lane, and middle of the night, and they start doing what you do, parked out on a lonely country road, and they hear movement, and all of a sudden something slams down onto the hood of the vehicle, the car, and the guy reaches over and he pops his headlights on, and standing right there in the front of the vehicle for everybody to see, him and his lady friend, is this huge 7-foot tall Dogman, and it's ticked. It's mad, it's angry, and it slammed its hands or claws, whatever you want to call it, down on top of the hood of the car again. And of course, needless to say, the intimacy has been ruined, and it's time to get up and get out of Dodge. So I just thought that was kind of funny, because the guy who told it to me, he's a really good guy. He's a Bigfoot investigator here in Mississippi, and he just made the comment. He's like, yeah, these two, they weren't supposed to be doing what they were supposed to be doing, because they had other, they were with other people. I'll just say it like that. So it just goes to show, if you're out in the woods and you're cavorting around, maybe, Dogman might not appreciate you doing that or something. I don't know. But I thought that was just kind of funny, that they were out there doing something they weren't supposed to do, and all of a sudden Dogman, ruins the moment. But yeah, once I got back into the field and started doing the Bigfoot thing, and I did have another encounter, a sighting in another wildlife management area. I saw a Sasquatch. It was a young one. I believe it was a young one. It kind of leaned out of this grass. I was parked on the side of the road taking pictures of some tree breaks. It was just a mass of tree breaks, and one little group of trees would be broke over like this, and then you'd walk down about 15, 20, 25 feet, and then there would be another group of trees broke over like that, and I'm like, that's too big of a coincidence. So I'm standing there taking pictures, and I walk over and I get my camcorder, and I film it, because I want to document where this was and these tree breaks. So I cut my camera off, and when I turn back around, I look back down the road, this reddish orange orangutan looking thing leans out of the grass. The grass was about 3 or 4 foot tall, and I didn't see its face. It was looking the opposite way, and it just kind of leans out, and it leaned back in, and I'm like, and you just cut your camcorder off, so I mean, typical. But I was like, okay, well, if that's a juvie, then mom and dad's probably close by, so I probably need to go ahead and leave. So, but I've had other encounters out in the woods that also, well, not also, but had absolutely nothing to do with Bigfoot. There's an area that I research and investigate pretty regular, where there's these 3 Indian mounds, and this place is just, it's a paranormal smorgasbord. I mean, we've had Bigfoot stuff go on. We've had UFO stuff go on. We've had residual hauntings. I encountered, the residual haunting, and then a few weeks later, what I would phrase as a demonic encounter. That all happened here at this one particular place. So, that made me, when that happened years ago, I was strictly a Bigfoot guy. I mean, I was just hardcore 100% Bigfoot. And when this demonic thing tried to hitchhike its way home with me, I was like, man, you gotta rethink this thing. You gotta be more prepared spiritually to go out into the field than what you have been. And I'll tell anybody right now, I'm not perfect. I'm a Christian. That's what I am. And part of the reason why I do what I do is to help people. Again, I'm not a preacher. I'm not a pastor or anything like that. Don't claim to be, but I do what I do because at some point people are going to encounter these things. They're going to bump into them. And the reason why I'm out there is to hopefully give somebody an avenue of somebody to talk to. Because when you see this, I mean, I've talked to UFO witnesses that when I was with MUFON, and these people, I would interview them, about their sighting or whatever. Excuse me. And one of the things that they would always go to toward the end of the interview would be, "So you believe me?" And I would be like, "Well, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I do believe you." And they would go, "Thank God. I thought I was going crazy. I thought I was going nuts." And I'm like, "No, you're not going nuts. This stuff happens." And I tell people all the time, this stuff happens. You've got to be prepared for anything. I mean, we've all heard about the stuff that goes on at Skinwalker Ranch. Sadly, the television show doesn't touch on this a whole bunch, and that's my honest opinion. I love the show, but it's just a little bit disappointing that they don't talk about the negative stuff, and I think there's a lot more negative going on there and in that area than what the TV show portrays. But if you've read the books and studied what has gone on there, you've heard of the hitchhiker effect. I mean, different people have gone to Skinwalker Ranch, government officials, just visitors, security guards, whatever. They've gone, they've seen some strange things, may not have seen nothing at all, but then they go home and they've got poltergeist activity. They've got Dogman in their backyard. They've got all kind of crazy going on around their house. And, I realized that what was going on with me out there that particular morning with the demonic thing, I realized you could be setting yourself up if you're not prepared for this. So that's what I do. I mean, of course, I love getting out there. I love the mystery. I love, the chase. Do I go out there stupid? No, I don't go stupid. I mean, I take every precaution that I can. When I can and where it's legal, I'm carrying a firearm. I carry a Garmin GPS. I let my family know where I'm going, how long I'm going to be gone. I don't take no big chances. I've been in places before where I've literally had a voice, and I'm talking about my voice. I'm not talking about something from the outside, but something would trigger my voice sitting there going, you need to leave. You need to go home. You need to turn around. You need to get the heck out of Dodge. You need to go home. And whenever that happens, I listen to it. I don't push it because I have absolutely zero desire to end up in one of David Paulides' new books. I don't want to be part of the missing 411. So, but I do what I do again, because I enjoy it, but also because, I mean, I've seen these things too. I've seen Bigfoot. I've seen a dogman. Thank goodness they were kind of at a distance and I didn't have them like all up in my face. And, you know, I was able to deal with that. A lot of these people don't get that. They get something, boom, up in your face, can't walk away from it, can't get away from it. I mean, like our friend Todd, you know, if you're familiar with Todd's encounter, you know that he didn't have no choice. I mean, he's been got, and a lot of people have that same thing happen. And my thing is, I want to be there. If somebody wants to talk, if they want to do that, thank God I'm not going crazy. Then I got their shoulder right here, because I want to document what happened, because that needs to be taking place too. We need to be documenting where these things are happening, when they're happening, how they're happening. But more importantly, instead of being, you know, the next superstar and trying to get on a TV show or some junk like that, we need to be listening to people that are going through this. Because look, I've seen guys get on these TV shows. I've had people that get on them, and it changes them. I mean, they stop being investigators and researchers, and now all they're worried about is the next episode. We're going to do another season. We're going to get another episode, and I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to be on a show, go for it. Do it. But you just need to be prepared, because it's not, you know, so many people want to be rock stars. You know, so many musicians have dreamed to be famous rock stars and famous musicians. And the graveyard is full of a lot of them that got their wish and they couldn't handle it. So, while this may not be quite that serious, it's still a serious thing in that, don't let it change you. Don't let it stop you doing what you need to be doing, and that is being there for people. So that's kind of Marcus Ellis, you know, in a nutshell right there.
Well, I like your answers, and yeah, you kind of fall along. I imagine we're, you know, right in the same generational grouping and everything. We're both Gen Xers, and you know, I grew up in the 70s, 80s. All the stuff that you talked about, I talk about all the time too, as far as, you know, growing up with Marvel comics, DC comics. You know, we were the generation that was into comics before, you know, Disney got their hands on it and made it popular for everybody else.
And Marvel. I mean, you know, I've got a couple of buddies at work, and of course, you know, they're superhero movie fans and stuff, like, you know, just like I am. And you know, I printed off this printout one day, and this guy comes into my office and he's like, "Man, I don't get it. I don't understand why the Marvel movies are so bad. Why they're not what they once were." And I pull out this piece of paper, and the headline from like the Hollywood Reporter is, "We don't hire people who read and like comics to make our movies." And I said, "There's your problem right there." So if you don't go to the source, then you're going to get it wrong. And you know, I want to watch a movie that, and same thing with I mean, I've seen some really good Bigfoot horror films, and you can tell these people did their homework. They because often in these movies, there's the wood knocks and there's all this little stuff, and you're sitting there going like, this guy, look at Chris Carter in the X-Files. He did his homework. So it's the same thing. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent.
No, that's okay. I have a tendency to get on tangents myself, so don't apologize about that. I did want to ask you, you had said something earlier about something you had added to your gear, and I imagine it's the same thing that I added to my gear, and I think it's probably because of what Scott Carpenter did, and it's probably putting that camera on the back of your backpack.
Yes, carry a GoPro. I put a GoPro right here on my chest strap,
Mm-hmm.
and I bought a second GoPro about a year and a half ago, and I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't fool with it. But I bought this one hookup, and it was just a nightmare. And that's probably why I didn't fool with it. But I realized, hey, instead of using that mount, swap, put the gawky mount here, and put the other one up on your shoulder. And about a month ago, I took it out and I field tested it, and it worked fantastic. But yes, the back trail cam is something that I absolutely will be using. I mean, I may not use it in certain spots, but again, the wildlife management area where I got bluff charged and the Bigfoot was sneaking across the trail, I wish to heaven I had a back trail going, that day. But yeah, Scott Carpenter, when it comes to people that inspire me and have changed the way that I look at things, I mean, number one, the knowledge that MK Davis has is just, I mean, he's a walking encyclopedia when it comes to Bigfoot and Indian mounds and the Native American lore and situations. And, my God, he's been all over. He's been to Lovelock Cave and just everywhere in the country, Bluff Creek. He's been to Bluff Creek so many times you can't count it. But what he's done for me in the realm of Bigfoot and investigating what to do, what not to do, how to do it this way, how to do it right, how not to do it. I've learned I can't even calculate it. But he turned me on to the work of his friend, Ron Moorhead. Ron Moorhead really got me into changing, and that's what MK was doing. He was telling me you need to expand your horizons. And I started looking into, I hate this term, but the woo, God, I hate that term. But Ron shed a whole different light onto it, about Bigfoot being able to do what it did, or what some of them can do, and to a degree, Dogman, and that, of course, led me into Scott Carpenter. Now, I'd known about Scott's work years ago, and I just kind of poo-pooed it off again because I was narrow-minded, and I was in that camp of, this is a big dumb ape. That's all it is. It's Gigantopithecus, case closed, but I still want to go out and investigate and blah blah blah. Well, there's too many people that were coming forward saying, look, this thing just up and disappeared right in front of me. This Dogman just disappeared. It walked into a tree, for God's sake. It went over this ridge in the snow, and there's no more footprints. How do you unpack that?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's not lying about that stuff. So it got me to thinking, and a few years ago, I really started looking at Scott's work. And of course, by the time, I had that epiphany that this man was really, his theory about some of these creatures being Nephilim descendants, it really hammered home to me that theory. And of course, then we lose Scott, and I don't think people realize in the Bigfoot community what we lost when we lost him. But thank goodness, his work is still there for his books, his videos, and his son is stepping up and taking the reins. And one of our very own North American Dogman Project guys, Harley Owens over in Tennessee, he's picked up Scott's baton. He's carrying it full-fledged, and that young man is really going to be able to take, Scott's areas, research areas, and I think he's really going to make it shine. But yeah, Scott Carpenter and the back trail cam, that is a definite part of my gear now. I just about won't be going nowhere without it.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Whenever I first saw Scott using that, or whenever he introduced that in one of his videos, I was like, "Why? Why didn't we ever think of that before?" Because it's something that's so
Yeah.
obvious. But it takes one of us who actually spends time out in the field to go, hey, try this. That's like whenever we're collecting tracks and footcasts and everything else like that. A lot of different ways of doing that have been developed, even for like crime scene stuff that has been developed by us, by field investigators. I was talking with Brian Terrell from Red Dirt Cryptids whenever we were doing a podcast,
I know Brian.
and we were talking about how hard it is to try and retrieve tracks from an area where, I don't know if you've ever been down like a gravel road after it had been like gone through the wet season and it had gotten kind of mushy, but then it settles back and it's like concrete. Well, there's an area that I do investigation. There's an area that I do investigations where I had recovered some tracks. There were Bigfoot tracks that were in that area, and so it's like concrete where it is. But if you pour your plaster of Paris or whatever you're using into that and you dig it up, you end up with gravel stuck in your plaster of Paris, and it's you're playing hell trying to get all of that out of there. So I told him, I said, well, here's what you do. You keep a roll of plastic, like cling wrap, in your backpack. And whenever you're going to cast in an area like that, you've got it on hand. You just lay that out over that area, and then you pour in your plaster of Paris on that plastic. You'll get your shape, but you won't get all the gravel and everything in there.
That is smart. That is really, really smart. Well, the other thing about the back trail camera, I had a guy flat out tell me, and he's right. I mean, I can tell you from personal experience, if you walk in the woods or you're in a hiking trail where you know that Bigfoot and Dogman are at, and let me say this now, I know Scott stopped his investigations. He quit. In his mind, he knew what these things were. He put it together, and he's like, he had, I guess, a lot of bad experiences. I know he had, and he was like, okay, I need to back off and I need to stop. Now I just need to help people, and you got to admire that man for doing that. So he would always tell people, don't go looking for these things. Don't go out there. And I agree with him. If you're just, Jimmy and Bobby, and you just got through watching, Expedition Bigfoot, and hey, let's go hit the woods. If you don't know and are not prepared for what you're going to do, it's probably, well, you run the risk anyway of it going bad, whether you wind up getting into a survival situation that you're not prepared for, or whether you actually bump into these things and it goes sideways. And so I get what Scott's, getting at. Me and you and everybody else that goes out there, I'm not saying we're anything special, but I think we're kind of prepped up and prepared because we know what we're going looking for. We know the risk and the danger and what could happen if we bump into these things. And again, I'm doing it so that I can spread the word and tell people, hey, these things are real. These things are out there. They're not everywhere. You don't have to be freaked out, but you need to know they're out there. So if you don't go prepared, and I kind of lost my train of thought there. Oh, I know what I was going to say. This guy told me, he said, Marcus, because, I was telling him what all I carried with me. and you know, and I'd have a camcorder in his hand, and I'd have a digital camera around, and I'd have a GoPro, and you know, and he said, you know, you're killing your chances of having an encounter, of seeing something. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? He said, these creatures are not dummies, and they're not. You know that. I know that. Bigfoot and Dogman are not, they're not dumb. They are not stupid by any stretch. They know what a gun is, and they know what a camera is. And he told me, he said, if you're walking through the woods and you got your camera, your camcorder, or you got a camera around your neck, it's not going to happen. You know, they're going to lay low, and they're not going to let you know that they're there. Or if they do, you know, they're going to run you out or whatever. But your chances of having an encounter just drop. You just went from 100 to 0 in 0.1 second. It's over. And so I realized that I was carrying too much gear. And I was spending more time screwing around with my gear. You know, I could have had a herd of elephants, you know, walking around me. I could have had, you know, a family of Sasquatch walking around me. But because I'm tinkering and twisting, and I just finally got ticked off at myself. And I thought back to what this guy said. So what I do now is, yes, I've got a camcorder. I've got a digital recorder. I've got stuff in my bag to document, you know, tracks and imprints and stuff like that. I don't have any plaster cast or anything like that, but I got measuring tape and you know, digital camera. But when I'm walking now, I'm either empty-handed or I've got just a hiking stick. I've got a GoPro right here. And, you know, like I say, in some cases, I'll now have my back trail camera. But every time I have done that, something has happened. And I think it's because, again, these things know. I mean, look at your trail cameras. I tell anybody, if Scott said this, a lot of Bigfoot researchers will tell people this. If you've got these things on your property, they're coming up at your house, put some trail cameras around the house. They hate those things. And they know what these things are. They know that you're trying to get a picture of them. And it just shows their level of intelligence. And if you're walking around the woods and you got all this camera gear, you're probably not going to get nothing. And that has been the case for me. So I usually don't have nothing in my hands. So I've had more activity, paranormal, Bigfoot, Dogman, than by having all this stuff strapped on, looking like something out of a documentary film series or something. So, you know.
Absolutely. Sometimes one of the best things that you can have on you, which everybody has on them all the time, just carry your cell phone with you.
Oh yeah.
You can use that. You can photograph, you can record, you know, sounds, all kinds of stuff with that thing. It's kind of everything in one. It's your GPS, you know, all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
So that's one of your best tools. Make sure that you keep on you. And if you get in trouble, you can reach somebody half the time. So, you know, make sure that you have that on you.
Well, and you know, especially again, one of the things that I learned from David Politis, and I really, I'm sure your watchers and listeners have heard of Hellbent Holler, you know, Joe and Jesse Doyle. They carry the little Garmin Mini, and I invested in that, and that was probably the smartest thing that I've done in a long time. So yeah, you know, it costs about $24 a month, but you can suspend, you know, if you see you're not going for a month or two, you can suspend your service. I don't never know when I'm going. So I just let it roll. And, I've got that thing on me, and I've got a list of family and friends. And the minute I get out of my vehicle, I'm sending a message, you know, this is where I'm at.
I will say
when I leave. So
yeah, I will say the one bit of gear that I've seen that Hellbent Holler had that I really thought was a good idea was the lightning detector. I noticed that they had that.
I do
on,
that.
And I picked Yeah, I picked one of those up. I mean, they're cheap. Picked one up, turn that thing on whenever I go out. You know, if you're out in the middle of a bright, sunny day and you're in the middle of the woods and that thing is going off, you got to ask yourself what's
Yes, I've
happening.
had it happen.
Yeah, I have too.
Yes, I mean, there's I bought mine and I'd had it probably a year and a half. That sucker never went off. I mean, it never so much as beeped. And a few weeks ago, I went to one of my research areas, and it's a WMA. It's in an area called Sky Lake here in Mississippi. And I got out of I had discovered this new trail. It was an RV trail, and it was clean, neat, pretty, white gravel rock. I could see where I was stepping. I didn't have to worry about, stepping on a snake or anything like that. Very, very well maintained. And I had been to this new spot 2 or 3 times. And I always had my Garmin and my lightning detector. And I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I've had people tell me, hey, look now, those things can pick up power stations and things like that. And of course I agree. But again, when you're in the middle of the woods and you're not nowhere near a power station or anything like that, it was a beautiful sunshiny morning. It's about 8:30 in the morning. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better morning. And I set my backpack on my tailgate. I cut it on, and I'm getting other stuff ready, and it's just sitting there. It's on. And finally, about the time I'm ready to put my backpack on, it goes nuts. It goes slap crazy. And I managed to catch it with one of my cameras, it going crazy like that. So it stopped, and I had to do something else inside the truck. So I just cut everything off. I come back, cut it on. I started out down the trail. It goes nuts again. So what was going on? I don't know. But I don't believe for a second. And look, this is a place where it's where I had my Dogman sighting. It's where Black Panthers have been seen. I've had, they've got a place where you can get on a boardwalk. I've had, like ghost steps, something walking down the boardwalk towards me, and there's nothing there. I mean, footsteps. I mean, Bigfoot activity. MK found a Bigfoot structure out there that he showed me years ago. I mean, I've found prints out there. So this is an area, and that's the thing about what we do. I tell anybody, at some point, all this stuff kind of bleeds over into each other. If you go to a place looking for Dogman, you could have a UFO sighting. If you go looking for UFOs, have a Bigfoot encounter. You go looking for, ghosts, might have a, lizard man encounter. I mean, that's the thing about this. And that's when I really woke up and started going back and looking at, your Scott Carpenters and your John Keels and stuff like that. And I realized, these guys knew something a long time ago, and now we're just now kind of really appreciating and listening to it. So I've learned a lot from those guys.
Yeah. When you were talking about Ron Moorhead earlier, I was trying to find my copy of Quantum Bigfoot, because I've got Ron Moorhead's books. I've got Jacques Vallée. I've got John Keel. I've got, everybody. I got a little bit of everybody, because I'm like you, John Keel, Jacques Vallée, they really had, seemed like they were starting to get a handle on the idea before everybody else really was. But we come from a time where you kind of had all these different camps. For a long time, cryptozoology was nothing but flesh and blood. It was a pure flesh and blood camp, because, well, cryptozoology is an extension of zoology. So, you're looking for animals and stuff. And of course, in the cryptozoology camp, they wanted nothing to do with the paranormal. They wanted nothing to do with the UFOs. The UFO people wanted nothing to do with cryptozoology, or, unless it was like Stan Gordon. And Stan Gordon, of course, he was kind of into everything. going on there. He
Yep.
was right in there with John Keel and Jacques Vallée.
Yes, he was.
And you gotta give credit due where credit's due. So we've slowly started to migrate all of these things together, which is both good and bad. It's good because I think there's a whole lot of overlap, like you were talking about, and I think like everybody pretty much is talking about anymore. The problem being is that there's a lot of bias that gets twisted and put in there that we have to be real careful about. I think we lose a lot of clarity of vision when we start to integrate the paranormal and the UFOs and stuff like that. We kind of lose our scientific perspective a little bit, and we tend to
That's
get
true.
into how do I put this? We have to be careful about becoming over religious about stuff, or over scientific, or over putting too much one way or another. We lose our clarity of vision, I think, is probably the best way I could possibly put it. And we need to maintain that scientific approach, as in what we do is we're gathering information, we're gathering data, we're gathering tracks, we're gathering sounds, we're gathering photographs, we're gathering all this stuff so that we have a database that we can compile information about later, because you have to have more than one occurrence of something happening to start to get, let's say you're out in the woods and you're looking for Bigfoot and you're kind of new to the whole thing, and you start to see tree structures and nobody else has ever mentioned tree structures before. And, you start to photograph these tree structures. Well, you may not know, and right now we don't know specifically what these different tree structures mean. But as we compose this database over time, somebody like a Scott Carpenter is going to come across one at some point and go, oh, this means turn left, you go here, or this means water is right here. And then we can say, okay, when Billy Bob is out in the woods and he's, found this structure, he's going to know when he sees that tree structure, it means water's right there, or turn left right here, because we have developed that database. And that's what we need to do. We have to be careful about what we assign to things until we're really prepared to. So,
Right. Absolutely. And again, that's something that, I mean, again, in Scott's view, he went down that Nephilim path. And again, I think there's a lot to what Scott, believed. I think that is certainly a piece of the puzzle that we're working with. But as an investigator and as a researcher, you can't and you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. And I'm not disparaging Scott or anything like that, because again, I would say the bulk of my belief, I leaned the way Scott leaned. But one thing that you have to do as an investigator, you cannot, and I repeat this, you cannot be closed-minded. And I think that's where you were driving at a minute ago. You've got to be able to accept the truth. And I can't tell you how many times I felt bad, because when I would investigate a UFO report and I had to tell this person, hey, look, you saw a Russian rocket booster re-entering, the atmosphere. And some people are they want to get fighting mad. No, that was a UFO. And my thing is, again, I have this thing, and I always do this in every interview that I ever do. When people will go, well, Marcus, what do you think Bigfoot is? Do you think it's A, B, C, D? And I go, it's D. It's all of the above. because we don't know. We don't know. I mean, look, most of your UFO sightings, for example, into the upper 90 something percentile, they can be rationally explained.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing can be said for Bigfoot, Dogman, paranormal. There's a lot of rational explanations that can be made for what people encounter. I mean, I know nobody probably wants to hear me say that, but it's the truth. Now, the other thing is, we don't know what the heck is going on behind closed doors of some of these governmental agencies. You hear this stuff all the time. Well, could Dogman be some type of experiment that has, gotten loose, or is this something that they release out to see, what this thing will do? I mean, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know. But I mean, can we just wipe that off the slate as not being a theory? I don't think we can. I think you have to look at everything objectively. And as MK told me, you go where the evidence leads you. And one thing he told me, no matter what, if the evidence tells you it's Bigfoot, then it's Bigfoot. But if evidence tells you it's not Bigfoot, then don't let it be Bigfoot. As he always told me, don't be afraid to be wrong. If you make a mistake, admit it. Hey, I made a mistake. This is not right. But he also told me, don't be afraid to be right either. If you're right, you're right. Don't be afraid to be right. So that's why I say there are no experts. There is just what is one day going to be the cold hard truth, and that's what we have to strive for. Tell the truth, be honest, and hope for the best.
I agree. I think we're all students out here, and the only experts are going to be Bigfoot and Dogman themselves. And speaking of that, I know everybody is going to want to hear about your Dogman experience. So tell us about what happened, or what has happened between you and Dogman. What kind of experience have you had with Dogman?
Okay, well, sure. Again, when my best friend years ago, when we became best friends, and he realized that I was off into this stuff, and to this day, he's still, kind of, I mean, he's interested, and I every blue moon I'll get him to tag along with me. But he's like, no. If you want to go get ate by Bigfoot, you go right ahead. You want Dogman to get you, you go right ahead. I'm staying at the house. I will live this vicariously through you. And I'm like, yeah, sure, man. Appreciate it. So he would always ask me, well, do you really want to run into one of these things? You really want to see one of the things? I'm like, yeah. I mean, why would I be out there doing what I'm doing if I didn't want to see one? Now, as I told him, do I want to run face to face with one like what say happened with Todd and hundreds of thousands of other people? No, I wasn't looking for that. And thus far I haven't had that. I always tell people, well, if you see one, how do you want to see it? And I always jokingly say, I want to be way over here and I want it way over there. And that's kind of what happened with my two Bigfoot sightings and the Dogman encounter. I was in, excuse me, I was in the Sky Lake area, and I was in this certain part of the WMA that had a big section of swamp that would have been, I think, I may be saying this wrong, so I want to let people know that my memory may be a little faulty here, but the swamp was I think it was to my north, and so I got the edge of the swamp line or tree line back over here. Well, over here, and when I say this part here, Robert, your eyes are going to light up. Up on top of this little rise here was an old cemetery. And I'm right there on the edge. See, there you go. I say that and people go, "Oh, okay, here we go." 2 plus 2. But I'm probably about 100 yards looking toward the east, and I just happened to stop, and about 100 yards out in the middle of this open deal, swamp, cemetery, road, there was this big pile of debris. The government had been clearing out and expanding, I guess, the area where you could walk, hike, or whatever. And there was this big pile of debris. It's probably about 8 foot tall, and it had a big tree, beside it, growing up the side of it. If my memory is correct, this has been a couple of years. Got to check my notes. But anyway, I've got my gear on, and I'm just fixing to head over into this section here where I can get on this trail. And I just happened to turn around. And when I turned around and I'm looking toward, I guess that would be the east, I caught movement out of my left eye. And I look, and this thing comes running. It was on all fours. It comes out of the swamp, the tree line, and it's got this weird, I can't even describe it. I knew the first thing that went through my mind was black bear, but I very quickly shoved that out of my box, because you want to put everything in a box. I shoved that out of the box real fast because this thing wasn't running and loping the way a bear does. It didn't look like nothing like a bear. At least not the head, the snout, and the back legs. This thing was huge. I mean, it was big. And it's broad daylight. It's a Sunday morning, for heaven's sakes. And it's about 8:30 in the morning, and this thing comes doing this. It was almost like it was gliding. It was real fluid. It was graceful the way this thing was moving. It was so fluid. And I saw the ears. The ears were standing straight up, jet black from front to back end. It was jet black. And I saw the snout, and the mouth looked to be closed. I didn't see any teeth or anything like that. But I'm like, dog, canine. I mean, that's the next thing. Once I got bear out of the way, I'm like, this is a huge dog. And then I'm like, now wait a minute. Before I could go any further with that process, again, you start trying to put stuff in boxes, because your eyes are telling you one thing and your brain is sitting there going, I'm not ready to accept what my eyes are telling me. So before I could go further down that mental process path, up in the cemetery, I didn't see it until it come out of the cemetery, but there was a young deer, and it was a young doe. And she come running out of the cemetery in front of the pile. This thing went in behind the pile. When it went in behind the debris pile, I never saw it again. I don't know if it stayed behind it, or if when the deer ran, it distracted me and it went on up. I never saw it after that. But the deer comes out of the cemetery, and let me tell you something. She's carrying the mail. Whatever this thing was, she didn't want no part of it. And she comes shag-tailing, and she runs up into the swamp, kind of, catty corner from the way where it come out. She ran up into the swamp, and I'm sitting here going like, now ain't that something? What the heck did I just witness here? And you know what dummy Marcus does? He just turns to the west and goes and gets on the hiking trail. I'm like, I did not want to believe I had seen what I saw. And it took me weeks. It took me, heck, it took me almost 2 months to sit there and realize that was not a bear. That was not somebody's big dog down the road. It wasn't a mountain lion. It wasn't a deer. You just saw a deer. I know what a deer looks like. This thing is jet black. This thing probably come up. I'm 5'7". Guesstimating the back of this thing would have come up to my chest. This thing was huge. It was tall. Now it never got up on 2 legs. It stayed on all fours. What little bit of time I saw it. But it took me weeks. And finally one day I was like, you know, I know it was a dog man. And you know, that phenomenon has, by this point, it's done pushed the Bigfoot stuff kind of off to the side. And I'm like, I've got to know more. I've got to get with some people who know more about this phenomenon than I do. And I called up Vic Cundiff, you know, Dogman Encounters Radio.
Mm-hmm.
And I got him on the phone, and we had a whale of a conversation. And Vic steered me toward the NADP. He said, look, I'm going to give you some guys' names to call. And I talked to a couple of guys. Well, one of the last guys I talked to was Al Santorigo. And I didn't, you know, at the time, I didn't know that Al was in the NADP. I had no idea. That wasn't the reason why we were talking. I just knew he knew a lot about Dogman. So we talked on the phone for about an hour, and we're talking and talking and talking. And, you know, heck, we act like we've known each other for 500 years. And finally, about an hour into the conversation, he goes, look, you know that I'm North American Dogman Project, right? I said, no. I said, I just knew that Vic was going to turn me on to some of you guys. But I didn't expect, you know, all of y'all to be in ADP, because Vic gave me about 5 names and telephone numbers, and I talked to just about all of them. And he said, well, look, we don't have nobody in Mississippi. He said, your experience, what all you've done with MUFON and all like that. He says, would you be willing to come on board and represent Mississippi for us? And because we've got to have some representation down there. And I said, absolutely. I said, I'd be honored. So that was my Dogman, you know, encounter and sighting. It was, again, I was just lucky that it wasn't one of those face-to-face terrifying ordeals. I mean, when I said, what did dumb Marcus do? Went and got on the trail. I think it was just a nervous, knee-jerk reaction to not accept what I saw. And it took me talking with Vic to really, I mean, he just flat out told me, he said, Marcus, he said, you know what you saw. He said, I don't have to say it. He said, you say it. And I'm like, yeah, I saw a dog man. And that was my encounter. And that's how I got hooked up with, you know, you guys, the NADP, and I have enjoyed every second of it so far.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. Definitely. I'm going to ask you, why do you think there is that odd link between Dogman and those? Actually, there's 3 elements you mentioned in there, more so than just 2. One was definitely the swamp. Swamplands seem to have this overwhelming, reoccurring, you know, thing that happens with Dogman. Cemeteries
and Bigfoot.
Another one. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Bigfoot actually pops in with both of those. And then the third one you mentioned, which you might not have even thought of at the time, and that's the brush pile. That big brush pile like that, because they will den up. And a lot of times, you know, we don't think about it, but those brush piles make a perfect cover for a den area. Why do you think those things are something that Dogman seems to use as a reoccurring habitat? Like the swamp, the cemetery. We'll stick with those 2.
Okay. All right. Well, there's another one too, Indian mounds. Bigfoot, Dogman, a lot of Bigfoot, Dogman encounters and sightings happen around Indian mounds. The 3 Indian mounds that I'm talking about, now I'm not saying that these were Dogman tracks, but I found canine tracks out there that I measured and photographed. They were 5.5 inches long, 5 inches wide. Again, does that necessarily mean Dogman? No, but I mean, I couldn't take the chance and not document it because it could have been. But going back to your question, I mean, stop and think about it. All right. Bigfoot, in my opinion, has been here ever since the Native Americans were here. Sasquatch and probably Dogman too. They grew up beside each other. They watched each other. And if you look at Native American history, Native American warfare, their tactics, a lot of times when the Native Americans would go to war and they would wage combat, the Indians that were in areas where there were swamps, they would use guerrilla tactics. They would hit and run. And where would they run back to? They would run into the swamp. Because they knew that the white man or the Spanish or the French or whoever didn't know how to navigate and did not know how to handle what all was up in a swamp like they did. Sasquatch is no different. They grew up beside the Native Americans. They watched the Native Americans build these mounds. They watched some of these mounds, of course, this is another topic for another day. I don't think that the Native Americans built. I believe something else built these mounds, and they might have used the Native Americans to help build them. But the Sasquatch, the Dogman, they watched man do smart things. They picked up on this. They learned. That's why I say they know what guns are. They know what all this stuff is. They know what bows and arrows are. They know when to come out, when not to come out. Hunting season, for example, they know that they probably need to retreat back into the woods or swamp deeper. That's when I have the lowest amount of reports and sightings and encounters pop up. But the connection there, I think, is because look at what the swamp offers a creature like that. Lots of food, lots of water, lots of places to hide. I can't run up in a snake infested, alligator infested swamp. They can. Cemeteries. I think I think they realize that maybe the cemetery, maybe it offers some type of protection or something. There's certainly a link there with humans and our dead. They know that. They know what's there. Maybe there's some type of spiritual connection that's there. Dogman, Linda Godfrey picked up on this in one of her first Dogman books. She realized that after a story that was reported to her of a Dogman that was at this church, and next to this church was a Indian burial mound, and there was this Dogman, this night watchman saw this Dogman, digging into the side of this mound. So I think, Bigfoot researchers like MK, they put 2 and 2 together a long time ago. There's a connection between Bigfoot and mounds. There's a Bigfoot connection between swamps. Because again, if you're just out in the middle of the woods, you're going to have wildlife there. You may have deer and stuff like that, but a swamp, you've got again, everything is on the menu. You've got fish, you've got snake, you've got wild hog, you've got deer, you've got water. It's the perfect place to hide. So yeah, absolutely. There's a definite connection between, those places and these critters. Dogman would be no different. Dogman's not stupid. It knows the benefits of being able to run up into a swamp or whatever. Now, this debris pile, I went back and inspected it multiple times. It was not big enough to be a den or anything like that. That thought did go through my mind, but I inspected that area thoroughly for tracks and prints, and I couldn't find anything. But again, Dogman Cemetery. Now, I think personally, I think it was just looking for breakfast. I think it saw the deer up in there, and it figured, okay, this is kind of a young deer. I might be able to snag this thing and get it back into the swamp. It never saw me. To my knowledge, the Dogman never saw me. The deer never saw me. They were too focused on each other and, doing what they were doing, which were either getting away or trying to catch. So that was my takeaway from it.
All right. Yeah. Good answers. So, before we start heading towards closing this off, I got to ask, what is quite possibly the strangest thing you've ever run into aside from Bigfoot and Dogman when you were out? Like a different kind of cryptid that maybe you couldn't explain, or, just something weird that you've run into while you were doing your investigations?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I've had a lot actually. Wow, that's a very good question. I always talk about this whenever I do an interview, but I would say probably I got to go back to these 3 Indian mounds, and I'll do this very briefly. There's 3 mounds at this research area that I have, and it has a reputation of being called Hell's Gate. Now, these 3 mounds, they're in the shape of a triangle. The main mound is right across this big road. The 2 other mounds are on the other side of the road, kind of opposite of each other. Now, the 2 mounds, I have gone there. I've lost track. I mean, I'd have to check my journal to see how many times I've been there. I have never had a bad experience at these 2 smaller mounds. Never. Now, I've heard, again, now that's where I got the footprint or footprints. It was multiple prints. That's where I found the dog canine track, Dogman track, whatever. We have Chupacabra here in Mississippi as well. But I've been over at these other 2 mounds, and I've heard things going on behind me at the main mound. The main mound is probably about 25 feet tall. It's pretty good size. And I can tell you for a hard, cold fact, there's been some bad stuff that took place at this mound. There's a lot of bad paranormal activity that's taken place over there. Me and MK have experienced it together and separately. I mean, we just don't have enough time to go into what all I've seen and experienced there. I've been on the main mound. I pick and choose. I don't go there lightly. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm very, very cautious when I go up on the main mound, because again, there's bad spirits and stuff there that I don't want to tangle with. Mm-hmm. I have been on this mound, and I've had things scream at me. I've been there, and I've had things just feel like it just walked up or rushed up behind me. I turn around, there's nothing there. But to answer your question, as you said, to close out, I've had 2 things happen. Number one, I was there one morning, and broad daylight, beautiful sunshiny morning. I'm taking pictures. I'm down close by the main mound. And all of a sudden, the sound of like bells, like this rhythmic bell sound, came out from back behind this huge mound. And it come out and it passes right in front of me. And it just goes right on back around to the back side of the mound, and it stops. And it's just this rhythmic, sound. It sounds like, how a tambourine has got the metal, tambourine, little cymbals, whatever you call them.
Right.
It sounded like a tambourine, just a ching, 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 ching. That's what this sound was. And I'm standing there, and just earlier I had found a dead possum on the incline going down to where I was standing when I heard this sound. This possum, the skin from the back part of the tail had been pulled all the way to where the wad of skin and fur was hanging there right on the tip end of its nose. It was all intact. There was not an ounce of meat. All the bones had been picked clean, and they were laying there perfectly intact. This was a whole possum, and something had picked this thing clean, just like me or you would eat a piece of chicken or a piece of rib. So when I heard the sound, I was elated. I was just like, holy crap, this is actually happening. And but then I stopped and I realized, okay, you've heard a few things across the river. You found this dead possum, just completely mutilated, ate whatever, and now you got this. It's time to go home. So I went home. So that was the first thing that happened there. The second thing was the demonic thing, in my opinion, that happened. I went to the same place because I was thinking about filming an amateur documentary, which I've since changed my mind about, and I just put stuff up on my YouTube channel. But anyway, I shot what was going to be some B-roll by the mounds. I got in my vehicle again. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, broad daylight. So I drive down the road. I'm heading back the way I came to get on the highway to go home. And I look off in the distance, and there's this oil derrick sitting there just pumping oil. And I'm like, let me pull over and I'll get some footage. I'll shoot some footage of that and, have it for B-roll. So I got out of my car, cut my car off, got out, parked, of course. And I get on the hood of my car, and I've got my camera, and I film a couple of minutes of the oil derrick. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. It's time to go. So I open up the door, take my keys out of my pocket, and I sit down. I put my camera on the front seat, and before I can get the keys in the ignition, again, my car's not running, air conditioner's not running, everything's fine. Before I can put my keys in the ignition, from the back seat of my Nissan car comes this loud, right in my ear, this loud hissing sound. I mean, it was loud, and it went right in this ear right here. And I'm thinking to myself some things that I can't repeat on air, and I'm not going to. But I'm freaked out, and I immediately do what? Start putting things in boxes. The first thing I'm thinking is, holy crap, I've got a snake in the car. How did a snake get in the car? And why is it, why is it hissing at me and not striking me or something? And I look all in the back seat, there's nothing there. And then I'm like, holy crap, I've done run over something. I've done punctured a tire. And I've had that happen. And I've got air escaping from a tire. And oh my God, I'm fixing to be stranded. I get out, walk around the vehicle. Tires are fine. Brand new tires. And I sit back down in the vehicle, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, what just happened. And you need to start praying, and you need to do it now. This is going through my head. So I started praying. And I prayed and asked for protection and to not allow anything to attach itself to me, follow me home, me, my car, my gear, whatever. And automatically, when I did that, everything just felt lighter. So I cranked up the car, and I drove on down the road, and there was this small old church sitting there, and I pulled into the parking lot, and I prayed again. And I made a promise to me and the good Lord, this whole going out in the woods thing, this just got reevaluated. This Marcus just changed tactics completely. And so that's why I say before I go, I pray up. While I'm there, I pray up. When I get ready to come home, I pray up. So, again, that's just me. I feel better that way. I feel like I've got more protection. And, my faith, it's a very strong thing. It's a very good thing, a very protective thing. So that's probably the strangest and probably one of the most frightening things I've ever had happen to me. I mean, I've had a handful, but that was something that was something from another place. That was an entity from somewhere else, and for whatever reason, whatever it was, whatever kind of entity it was, it didn't like me, and it didn't like me being there, and it wanted me gone, and I was happy to oblige at that point.
Well, it just goes to show that, you never know what you're going to run into when you're out there. There's a whole world of things that we don't understand, even as investigators, much less, the person who is just kind of got the armchair interest in these things.
Yep.
Even those of us that spend tons of time out there in the field, we run into things that we've never seen before, never encountered before, or never want to see again, or never want to encounter again. But Marcus, it has been fantastic having you on the show. If you'll hang around just a minute, I'm going to wrap things up here, and then I'll get right back with you. Hey, everybody. Thanks a bunch for showing up and listening to another episode of Monstrous, the podcast. It was fantastic having Marcus Ellis on the show. We hope to have him again in the future. We definitely will try and do that and get some more of his stories and get some more of his insight as a field investigator, not only with Bigfoot, but with Dogman. But as I tell you all the time, lock your doors, lock your windows, check in the closet, check under the bed, because monsters are real and you never know when they're going to be back. Everybody have a great night, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.